Okay. Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly online event where we cover anything that may be of interest to librarians across the state and across the country now. We do these sessions every Wednesday morning live at 10 a.m. Central Time. They are free. Anyone who wants to can attend and watch our sessions. But we do record all of them, so if you're unable to join us on Wednesday mornings, that's fine. You can always go to our website and watch any of our recordings of any of our previous sessions. We do a mixture of things here on NCompass Live, presentations, Q&A sessions, mini web tours, whatever we come across that may be of interest to librarians. We have commission staff that do sessions, and we also have guest speakers, as we have today. Today we actually have our speaker remoting in with us, joining us from up in Omaha, Nebraska, Marty Magee. Hi, Marty.
Hi, Krista.
Hello. Marty is our liaison for the National Network Libraries of Medicine here in Nebraska, and she's going to take us through some digital resources that you can use from the National Libraries of Medicine. So I will just hand over to you, and you can take it away, Marty.
Great. Thanks, Krista. It is a pleasure, as always, to share my information with you. I often say many people don't even know about the National Library of Medicine, and it is a treasured resource, has oodles and oodles of material, not just for medical purposes, but from the history of medicine perspective as well. And those are some of the things I'm going to be showing you today. If you think about it, probably all our resources are digital. We have more than 100 different databases. Anyone can access any of our information. There is no charge for it. This is federally supported, just like the Library of Congress. And we want people to use our resources, and that's why I share things like this presentation. So we have been around for 175 years, and that may surprise people, but the actual library is on the campus of the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And regular people can go and visit there. You do have to go through a little security, but that's not unusual in these days. Anyway, I'm going to start taking you through some of these resources, and if you have questions, as Krista mentioned, by all means put those in the question box, and I will try and address those. All right. Well, here are some of the things I'm going to cover, and I just kind of wanted to give you a broad overview about what our National Network of Libraries of Medicine is about. You know, our job is really to promote the databases and software of the National Library of Medicine. So up here on the upper left, this is from the NLM History of Medicine. Their goals are really to serve a wider audience and to lead and engage the digital present and future, and I think that leaves a wide venue for us to fill. And then on a regional level, I'm part of a 6-state area, and I actually report through the University of Utah, but we have major resource libraries, what we call resource libraries, in each one of these states at which people like myself are based. And part of the way we operate our area is through use of what we call a logic model. It's really how we set our goals for the year and how we measure whether we've met those goals at the end of the year. So you can see what our regional medical library goal is here, is to develop our collaborations. Part of the way we do that is by doing these kinds of presentations. What outcome do we want to have from that? We want to make sure that librarians are aware of the historical collections and things that are from the National Library of Medicine, and obviously to promote history of medicine resources within our region. So some of this is on history of medicine, but some of it is on some of our other database. So we're going to look a little bit at Locator Plus, which is sort of a how do you get to things, a little on history of medicine. We'll talk about Visible Human, turning the pages. Some of our present, you know, our two really big databases are MedlinePlus.gov and PubMed. I'll also talk about the Cell Library, which is it's actually not from the National Library of Medicine, but I think it's a good example of where things are going. And then what's beyond the National Library of Medicine, and traveling exhibits and some history of medicine collections. So we're going to cover a lot of different bases here. So first of all, the National Library of Medicine. This is our web page. And again, as Krista shared with you, this slide program will be available on SlideShare, but if any of you have any questions about it, by all means let me know. Things that I wanted to point out here, over here with the red arrows on the left, Images from the history of medicine, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Locator Plus. We're going to talk about the history of medicine, and then some online exhibitions and digital projects, which, again, you may not have an awareness of, but are really pretty interesting. So this is Locator Plus, and it's just a way of finding things within the National Library of Medicine. So I like to let people know that there is a wealth of information, not just, as you might think in terms of journals or collections that have been from your years past, but even in terms of audio visuals and computer files. So in this case, I just did a very basic search on diabetes, and I wanted to limit it to audio visuals and computer files. And if you look then down at what has come up here in 1, 2, and 3, you can see the first one is an executive summary. The second one is Practical Diabetes International. The third one I thought really looked interesting, the Dragnet for Diabetes, which is a BBC TV production. Might be fun to use in some kind of a health class, or if you're doing a presentation that might be about diabetes and you want to look at it. That was actually produced in 1979, so you can imagine treatment of diabetes has changed quite a bit since then. And over here on the right-hand side, you can see if there's an internet link to the record. So that's your real benefit there, is whether you can get to those kinds of resources or not. So why would you use Locator Plus? You might want to find records for journals, books, reports, and audio visuals. You might want to find records for serials and books that are not in the National Library of Medicine collection, but are owned by regional libraries. So we would be an example of a regional library. I alluded earlier to resource libraries. In our state, in Nebraska, the University of Nebraska Medical Center, which is actually where I'm based, is the only resource library. In the other 6 states in which I'm at, that's Wyoming does not have a medical school, but there are resource libraries at the University of Wyoming, University of Colorado, University of Utah, University of Kansas, University of Missouri, Washington University, and Creighton University, also here in Nebraska, is a resource library. And the third way is to see records for journals, books, reports, and that's another what we call gray literature kinds of things, and audio visions that are on order or on loan or in process also. So here are some images from the history of medicine. I actually think these are kind of fascinating, and when I was putting this presentation together, it's very easy to get off on a tangent, but I wanted to point out the breadth of what this offers to you. So if you look there on the left-hand side, it says portraits. There are more than 25,000 different portraits within this that you can search for. There's more than 7,000 posters. There's more than 4,000 postcards. And you can see that these actually come from a wide range in terms of time frames. But sometimes they just can give you a little snapshot of what things might have looked like a long time ago. So, here you have 200 amputations in 24 hours. That's probably a pretty grim one. I like these ones with the pharmacists, where they have all these pills behind them, or over here on the lower left, where you can see a little boy just saying, "A box of pills, please." I think our pharmacies were a lot simpler, of course, in those days. So here's an example of another image. Now, we always put a copyright statement with it, particularly if we believe it to be in the public domain. So if it's in the public domain, you might be able to use it. But let's say you were working with students and you wanted to look up, you were on an anti-smoking campaign. Might be interesting to use a poster like this one. From the history of medicine, this is a section of the National Library of Medicine. You can see over here the historical collections, and they've kind of grouped those sort of by media. And then using the collections, they've got online catalogs, printed catalogs, reference services, and of course they do have reference librarians there if you get stuck on things too. Now, when I put together this presentation, I had done it originally for some medical librarians, so we always throw in some exercises to make that a little bit more interactive, and our medical librarians can get an hour of Medical Library Association credit for doing the exercises and following along with my presentation. So if you are so inclined, you may do so also. You would just go to the website that's at the top of the page here, and you would click on a topic to find more choices. So if you were looking for books and journals, what is the first entry under books and journals? And I'm not obviously going to require you to answer that, but I'm going to tell you. It's a grouping that's books before 1914. And of course, medical books have been around for a long time. And in fact, the University of Nebraska Medical Center here has a very excellent rare book collection that dates back books to more than 500 years ago. So online exhibitions and digital programs. Now these, again, are digital programs that you can just access from online. So here's digital collections, Medicine in the Americas. So that covers a whole range between 1610 and 1920. There's digital collections of film and video. Cholera online. So again, here's a particular disease, and it has a digitized collection to go along with it. And if you clicked on that further, this is where you would get to those featured collections. Now they do have more items than this, but these are the ones that they're featuring currently. Now you can read books that have been digitized, and you can even get them on your Kindle. And if you go into that selection, I just happened to pick a book called, and you can see the title of this book here, Water Cure for Ladies, just because I thought that sounded so intriguing. And it's a popular work on health, diet, regimen, females and children, prevention of curing diseases, and a full account of the processes of the water cure. So it's sort of a fascinating read, but you can look at it in several different ways. You can read it online. You can get it as a PDF. You'll see here there's a little thing for Kindle, so you can get it for a Kindle. But it gives you all the information that you should need in order to get to the actual reading thereof. So here's what it might look like. So in this particular book, you might, it's really just a digitization of the book itself. So, here's Food for the Sick Room, which I think is interesting, or Phrenology, which I believe is the reading of bumps on your head, if I'm not mistaken. Household memoranda, etc. So obviously things look a lot different, but wouldn't it be fun to look at a woman's health book today and compare it to one of these books? And here's what that Water Cure for Ladies actually looks like in its digitized form. So you can actually see page by page. So if you wanted to jump to a particular page, you could easily do so from having looked at that table of contents. So films and videos, I don't know how old our audience is, but if you look at the third entry down here, you can see a gentleman who got some renown in a different field. So obviously this was his early part of his acting career. Some of you may recognize him as Gene Kelly, who was a very famous dancer and star of movies. Anyway, he was part of a little video which I have watched. It's about 10 minutes long about combat fatigue irritability. Oral histories is another thing that's part of this history of medicine collection. And again, these were collected. They're like collected interviews, if you will. This one happens to be about homeopathy. I'm not always sure I'm saying that right. But this one was an early practitioner and founded that American Foundation. Again, I threw in a question here that pertains in our 6-state area. There's actually a Broadband Award in the Medical Library Association, and she did conduct an interview. And so if you did a search for her, then you could find out over here it says what university that's with or affiliated with, and hers happened to be affiliated with Washington University in St. Louis, which, as I mentioned, is one of our resource libraries. So you would get a further explanation on Estelle Broadman and some information on her as a biography. But I particularly liked a little quote that came out of here, and she was talking about research aspects in information science and bibliographic control. And she goes on to say this last part, which I think really encapsulates it really well, is we don't have to feel very high sounding when we're thinking about research. But this bottom quote here, it sounds better to say research, but it's just a child's examining of the world. It's looking at those what ifs. So I thought that was a really neat way of putting it. And she happens to have been a person who one of my team members knew from Washington University, so she said it was kind of fun to see this information there. Now, Visible Human is like one of my favorite projects. I just think, again, it's a fascinating project. So in this one, what they did was they took the body of a prisoner in Texas, a male first, and then if you can imagine that it was standing upright, and then they just sliced it in 1 millimeter slices. So you can essentially get that whole data set if you want to be able to use it for research. When I was doing the research for this particular program, I actually even watched a video of how they did that. So they take basically a tissue sample, and then they have to scan it, and then they take another slice, and they would scan that. I mean, so it's a very arduous process. And then a few years after they did the male body, they solicited for a female and found a woman in Maryland who had died of a disease and wanted to volunteer her body to be the woman Visible Human. So they did hers in slices that were 3 times thinner, so they were like 1/3 of a millimeter. And then you could see those slices as well. So when was that Visible Human female data set released? You can kind of think about this in your mind and how far things might have been. But that actually happened in 1995. Turning the pages, this actually is my favorite thing from the digital collections. And to me, this is really cool because A, you get some very interesting manuscripts. You can see here the illustrations. And B, it really, this was available even before people were using e-book readers in a big way. But it really shows you as you are turning the pages. So when you clicked your mouse button, it would just flip the page for you. The advantages of this kind of a book are, again, that you can examine it in lots of different ways. You might be able to see these little blue icons on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So, for example, if you wanted to get the text of what was on a page, and many of these books are in Latin or a different language, you could get the text, which would be in English. If you wanted to hear an audio component of it, you can hear it by clicking on this little microphone sort of thing, or I should say volume control sort of thing. You can enlarge the text so that you could actually take that magnifying glass and take it over a part of the illustration if you wanted to look more closely at that. And if you wanted to print off a page or something, you can do that as well. So to me, this is just a really neat thing. And yes, if you do it on your iPad, it's way cool. And how many books are in this collection? I believe there are 9 books in this collection. And if you go into this, and again, I really recommend that you do this, they have recently added one that is a papyrus scroll. So actually, when you scroll on it, you can see the scroll go back and forth. It's a really nifty technology, and I just think we're doing such neat things, and it's available for anybody to use. Now I'm going to hit MedlinePlus.gov because what one of my presentations would be complete without it. But we also have some videos and cool tools on MedlinePlus. This happens to be one of the videos, and this one happens to be on Parkinson's disease. Oops, guess I can't scroll that down a little bit, but there's an explanation under the Parkinson's disease. But as you can see, this is a little movie clip, and so if you just clicked on this little triangle here, it would make it go forward, and then you would actually see some animation here in the brain and what's really happening with Parkinson's disease. If you wanted to look up other topics, certainly you can do that as well. There is a video for PTCA, and that actually stands for percutaneous transluminal coronary angioplasty. And if anybody else knew that beforehand, I would send you a MedlinePlus briefcase. Here's one that I always mention, which kind of surprises people, that we have surgery videos. Most of these are about an hour long, and they are actual surgeries. It normally tells you where this surgery has come from. So if you're considering a particular surgery and you want all the information that you can possibly gather, this might give you an additional venue. Or if you just want to watch or read a transcript, of course, you can do that as well. It does give you the date on them, so you'll know, how old something like that. If we look at this one, it's 6 years old. I'm not sure how much that kind of surgery has changed in the last several years, but things do. This one has just been added in the last couple of years, and I would like to remind folks on MedlinePlus.gov, and particularly you as librarians, on the home page there is a place up here that says About MedlinePlus, and if you click on that, then over on the right-hand side, down at the bottom, there's a place that says Training Materials. This is actually the part of the page that this particular thing comes from. So, you can get to a MedlinePlus tour. You can do that in English or Spanish, and it doesn't take very long. It runs about 8 minutes long, so it's a nice way for you to do some training without actually doing some training, but you could have a little brown bag and run something like that in your class. There are brochures also on that page. One of the things they've added, as I said, in the last couple of years here, is this Understanding Medical Words. So it's going to give you the prefixes and suffixes of words. What I particularly like about this tutorial is that it gives you the correct pronunciations. So if you just want a little refresher, this is a nice place to go as well. It does require a flash player, but you could use this, if you were teaching a Latin class, I think this would be kind of interesting because, again, so many of our medical words have a Latin base to them. NIH Senior Health is a great resource for seniors. It primarily focuses on topics that affect seniors, and it has lots of little videos that include real people and give you more information on particular topics. So you can see here on this first one, it says alcohol use and older adults. So, and there's a lady here over the left-hand side. So if you wanted to watch that video, you could. Again, it gives you the length on those videos, and if you want more information, it's a good place to go. The other thing I like about NIH Senior Health is you can increase the text size. So there's a little plus button up here at the top. So you can make the text much larger. You could make it smaller than if you wanted to. It has contrast as well. So if you're a person who suffers from macular degeneration, instead of having a white background, you can have a black background with white text. And then whether you have an audio component, this is the speech component, that also can be turned on. So in addition to seniors, this might even be a good resource if you have folks who have English as a special language or as a secondary language, or low literacy readers. This is a good resource too. PubMed, I'm guessing most public libraries don't use PubMed a great deal, but it is available. It is the index of the biomedical journals that exist really across the world. So it's about 4,500 different biomedical journals. We index the articles in those. It's an extremely robust database. If I am training or if one of my team members is training PubMed, it easily takes you a day to 2 days to get a handle on it. So it's not necessarily an easy thing to use, but there are webcasts that talk about it. So you can see there's lots of information here. There are little tutorials on that one, and that's what these quick tours are that are listed down here. They also give you how long those are. So those are usually very quick, and if you're going to get into this in any kind of a big way, I would suggest you view some of those beforehand to give you a better familiarity. PubMed was really developed before things like Google came around, so it's not necessarily a natural language search engine. It's really based on what we call MESH, which are medical subject headings, and things are tagged accordingly. And then the follow-on question from PubMed is, great, you may read an article abstract and that sounds perfect and you want to read this article, but most articles aren't available online for free. Probably about 10% of articles are available currently online for free, and those would be listed in this PubMed as free full text articles, so you can limit your search based on that if you want to. But if you can't get full free text, what do? Well, we have a program called Lonesome Doc, and your first step really, if you want to set up a Lonesome Doc account, is to contact the University of Nebraska Med Center, the McGugan Library of Medicine, here where I am, and the interlibrary loan people then set up an account for you. Now, if they can find an article here at the university, it costs not very much, a few dollars. If they have to order something from somewhere else, then the cost of an article could be maybe around $15. But if you were ordering an article directly from a publisher, it could be $30 or $50. So there is a savings by setting up this Lonesome Doc account and getting your articles that way. And anyone can do that. It's not just limited to health professionals. So as a public librarian, you might like to know that that kind of service exists. And they can either email something to you or send it to you in the mail. It really depends on how you want that delivery. I mentioned this database just because if you are interested in cool research, this is just kind of cool. It's called the CEL, an image library. And essentially, when you look at this cell, and if you clicked on any of these other pieces over here, it's going to highlight the pieces of that cell. And they have just some wonderful images in here, and it's just hard to believe these are things in your body. But just taken down to the nth level, but I would urge you just to take a look at it because it's kind of fascinating, and I think the way digitization is going, it just gives us that much more capability to learn things. Traveling exhibits. Now, these are no longer upcoming. I'm sorry to say they have just recently passed, but there is a Harry Potter exhibit. They had that one down in Columbia earlier this year. The Voyage to Health, which was over at Creighton. Creighton does a great job of bringing in these traveling exhibitions. And they also had a Darwin exhibit that was traveling and came in too. So you can sign up for these exhibitions. The only charge you pay is for freight. And typically they are these stand-up banners. And so, let's say it's about 5 of these banners. They have to send those to you, or they probably come boxed in cases. I'm guessing the cost is around $200 to $300, but this is a great way of, increasing some visibility for your library at not too large a cost. And again, some of these are fairly interesting. When I say name one of the 2 available expositions, one is on Henkel physicians, and I've forgotten what that one is about. The other one is called The Humor of It, and that one is actually about Shakespeare and medicine. So, again, provides another interesting venue. I think Harry Potter is booked yet for a while.
Marty, I had a question about those.
Yeah.
So you said that those have just ended, but you just meant the ones that were here locally. But libraries can still go and request them for
yes,
future.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, they can. And as you noted, may have noted, there were public libraries there, not just medical libraries. So we
anybody,
libraries to take advantage of that too. Absolutely.
Great.
I think it's actually an underutilized source. I always try and encourage people in Nebraska to do that, but really other than Creighton, we haven't had too many takers. You do have to have a little bit of space because you have to put those banners in a space where people can see them, but other than that, there's very little in the way of requirements. So further resources in the history of medicine. These are just library and archival collections, and you can look to see if a library is listed that you know of. And then there's another page also for that. This is the Directory of History of Medicine collections. So in this one you can see I have brought up the Special Collections Department of the McGugin Library of Medicine, where I'm based here. And actually it's just down the road on my same floor here. John Schleicher is our person who is in charge of our history of medicine, our rare book collections. You know, quite often doctors may pass away and then donate their collection of memorabilia and literature to our library, and so they sort that out and decide what we need to keep and not keep and what we have space for and so on and so forth. So it's a big job, and he does a great job at it. Access to audiovisual materials, again, this is just another piece of that. There's over 60,000 audiovisual programs in more than 40 different formats. A lot of these I've talked about here, but this is just a page that kind of gives you facts on that information. And what's in the future? You know, how do we decide what to digitize and what not to digitize? There have been discussions about this. I thought this one was interesting. So if you're interested in looking at some additional information, the Berkman Center for Internet and Society, which is out of Harvard University, is looking at that information. The Horizon Report, again, I mentioned this because I think it sort of makes you think about where things are going. And I think we as librarians we not only need to be cognizant of what's happening right now, but we really need to be able to look down the road. So reading a report like this may give you a few more ideas as to where you want to be taking your library. In our history of medicine, when we recently had a presentation from a fellow who runs the history of medicine area within the National Library of Medicine, and he said one of the really interesting things that's happening in libraries is what we call crowdsourcing. So for example, they wanted to look at publications of World War I hospitals in the United States, but no one had previously collected that information. So what they wanted to do is put that all together in one place. So by digitizing it, they could hold that information as a national institution, but it would still have the local roots of wherever that particular publication came to. So they can digitize it, they can collect it, but the printed copies could still, for example, remain back with those institutions. So, you know, by the fact that we have the internet and that we now have the ability to digitize these things and make them available as a whole, it makes these collections just that much more valuable because everybody can get to them. I think this was really a good example of something that took place over a large geographic area, but has a historical interest and has some local roots as well. So what can you do? So I would say, first of all, promote these resources in your institution, or if you have a newsletter, you could certainly mention it on those. You could lead a class or do a brown bag session. You can use these resources in your own presentations. Of course, give some credit to NLM if you would. And you can sign up for a traveling exhibit. This actually is the one that was about Shakespeare and medicine. So it's called The Humor of It. And as you may not be able to tell that, but This one has 6 different banners, so it just kind of shows you what those banners look like. But again, it's a great way to do some promotion. So that's more than 175 years of collections of information, and obviously it's an ongoing effort. So we hope that you all have celebrated as well. Our official anniversary has passed, but I still think it's a laudable period of time, and as I said, I'm happy to represent it and promote these collections. So that's all I have, and I don't know if we can take some questions now. That would be fine.
Yes, great. Thank you, Marty. Yes, anybody, if you have any questions, comments, or anything, type them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar interface. If you have a microphone, just let me know, and I will unmute you, and you can ask that way. At the moment, nothing came in while you were talking, but okay. Like I said, feel free to type anything in there. Everyone is watching. I am monitoring that. I was going to comment earlier, and I just kind of missed it. That you did mention, which I thought was really awesome about this as you're going through it. I was on my computer going to some of these pages and getting a little, yeah, loving the visible human one, and then the book, the digital book with the pages.
Yeah,
I'm turning one, and it's just, you know, there's so much that's out there that is free and able for people just to go and use. None of this is like purchase a database and have to have it. I mean, anyone can just use this stuff, and it's just, yeah, amazing. All this is out there, and so many things I just don't know about.
I know. That is so true. And I always stress the fact that not only is it no charge to you, but it doesn't require downloading something for the most part. It doesn't require use of a username or a password. Nobody's collecting data on you. So to me, those are all advantages, and as I say, I think this is one of the best uses of our taxpayer dollars at work. So,
we do have a comment actually from a librarian who's from a library in Virginia saying that they use the murder pamphlet collection as a basis for a forensics display, and they had gotten this idea from another library who did that.
Well, that's very interesting. I had not heard that. And in fact, you bring up there another point. There is actually some forensics, what do I want to say, information that you can get to too on the National Library of Medicine resources. I know I've heard of it being used in high school environments, for example. So there are all kinds of applications.
Oh yeah, you just got to think creatively. Go look through a lot of all those things. Also, the images section I was very impressed with too, seeing everything that was in there, wondering what I could. Yeah, the Visible Human project was very cool. That reminded me of there's the things that go into museums where they've got the preserved bodies. The bodies, yeah.
That is, yeah.
Similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you get to see the insides.
That's very fascinating.
Yes, that's a word for it. Yeah.
Yes.
I've been to one in Chicago, an exhibit of it, and it was very,
Yeah.
Impressive, yes.
So we have lots of fuel, shall we say, because medicine will always continue to be a changing and interesting environment. And speaking as one who didn't come in through the medicine door, I just find it a fascinating place to be, and I'm happy I landed here.
Yeah, I was wondering that you started out as a librarian and just ended up with medicine type area, or?
Actually, I had originally thought I'd go into school libraries, and I've worked with a lot of adults, and so really decided I needed an adult audience. And as a result of a special libraries class that visited the Coogan Library of Medicine here, I had an interest in medical libraries and worked at the VA for about a year, and then came to this position with the National Network Libraries of Medicine, which has been a good fit. So,
oh, yes. We always rely on you for all of our medical needs here. For any of our updates and things. So any other questions or comments from the audience? Looks like we've covered a lot of information here.
Okay,
and I've grabbed all of the links from the session, and I have posted them up into our Delicious account for the commission. So when the recording goes up, everyone will be able to access everything that you showed there. Even the ones in the end there, you had the Horizon report and that podcast. I went out and searched for those and found them, so they'll be included as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep. And the slides for this presentation will be up on our SlideShare account, also with the recording that we're doing right now. So after this is over, everyone will have access to this and go back and access it. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like any urgent questions are coming in right now.
Okay.
Which is fine, so we'll just wrap it up. I assume if you guys do have any questions about anything, you can always call Marty. Her information is there. And she can guide you through using all these resources.
Very good.
Yeah. Oh, we have some thank yous coming in, though. Yes.
Okay.
Great. So let's see here. I am going to grab control back here.
All right.
Just for the end here. And so thank you very much, Marty. Like, as I said, that was very, like I said, lots of things that I want to go and explore now. And just for my own fun.
Very good.
To see some of these resources, and hopefully librarians will use it to help their patrons of this too. So thank you very much for being with us today, Marty, and thank you everyone for attending. I hope you'll join us next week when our session will be all about ALTAF, the Association of Library Trustees, Advocates, Friends, and Foundations. And Sally Gardner-Reed, who's Executive Director, will be with us next week, and will share everything that they're doing and how you can use the resources from the Friends group and everything to help your library. So sign up for that and join us next Wednesday for our All About ALTAF session. So thank you very much for attending today. And I'm just switching over here. And hopefully we will see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.